ignoring these complaints because it's like, whoa, that's the customer. What am I,
Right.
And, same level of urgency and care in handling those complaints. It's absolutely essential.
Welcome to another episode of the Barron Report. Of course, this podcast is the one that talks about some of the most sensitive and innovative topics in the industry. Whether you're in retail, food service, or hospitality, this show is going to answer a lot of questions around some of your toughest challenges. And one of the things that, of course, the entire world is polarized by today is this whole issue of sexual harassment and inappropriate behavior by everything from media moguls to restaurant chefs and independent operators. So I thought, hey, we've got to get some answers to this to help our audience. And today with me, I've got Carrie Luxem. And Carrie is a restaurant HR guru. She's also the CEO of Restaurant HR Group out of Chicago. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's so great to be here.
Yeah. So, Carrie, let's kind of go in a little bit on your background. I know your restaurant beginnings all the way back into Potbelly was one of the reasons I contacted you. Kind of what have you done, since then that it has kind of kept you in the game here around HR and restaurants?
Yeah, no, I spent a long time with Potbelly Sandwich Works for about a decade or so. I helped build the HR infrastructure there, and I left in 2010. And I started my business, Restaurant HR Group, with the idea to help small to medium-sized restaurateurs set up their HR processes and systems and hire great leaders and help develop leaders, because I really think having great HR systems and the right leadership is an essential combination for having successful restaurants or businesses. And then on the other side of it, I have CarrieLuxem.com, which is my own personal brand where I'm out helping restaurateurs and leaders understand the complexities of HR through training and webinars and videos and articles and different things like that. So I'm really working to simplify this whole area of HR and helping people understand how important it is to have great systems in the entire life cycle of an employee. So from recruiting to hiring, onboarding, culture and harassment and all of that.
So you got your hands full.
Yeah, a little bit.
Let's kind of talk about, the kind of the issue at hand. And obviously the sexual harassment topic has been front and center mainstream media.
Right.
Some of this, of course, kind of kicked off with the Harvey Weinstein scandal and, of course, has started to move to a variety of other industries and has hit home here in the restaurant industry, where we've seen everybody from the founder of Eater to some of the top industry chefs being accused and or participant to some sexual harassment behavior and or inappropriate behavior. So I want to kind of open that up and really kind of, especially for our listeners, these are people that, they're running a restaurant, they're
Right.
They've got 50 employees and maybe it's their first restaurant or they have multiples. This is a constant ongoing issue. And now, of course, it's much more sensitive and right on the edge of society. Kind of your thoughts on, just in general, how you think this kind of came to a head from where, society has been to where we are now with a lot of these actions.
That's a great question. I mean, I think this has always been an issue, and the world has changed so much in terms of social media and internet. And so it's highlighted so much more. And I think there's so much of this in terms of inappropriateness and harassment. It's just rushed to it's put to the side. It hasn't been taken seriously, and until it becomes something that's this huge PR disaster. I mean, since all of this has been going on over the course of the last few months, the amount of restaurateurs reaching out to us that are sort of reactionary and wanting us to do training because of what's happened. I think that it's just highlighted more now because it's out there in the news, but it's it's never not been a problem. I mean, there are
Right.
the industry that we're in. I mean, the restaurant industry is very much about relationships, and we work crazy hours, and people meet and they, have relationships. But ultimately, there is, and I see a lot even at the very highest of the leadership levels with owners and operators. There isn't a seriousness that comes, that they don't take this as seriously as they need to, until it's too late. So yeah, so I think that people want to do the right thing, but they try to balance being this fun, family friendly culture, and that gets kind of misconstrued with inappropriateness and that sort of thing. So I don't think I have seen it firsthand for years that this is an issue, and it's now only really being highlighted at such a high level because of it's absolutely all over the news. Every big news anchor in the world is being fired for any inappropriateness, and so I think that it's scaring people because they can see how it's going to impact them from a PR standpoint, or what it could potentially do to their company. So now there's a lot of people going, wait, we better take this kind of stuff that seems a little silly or just borderline inappropriate. We better take it a little bit more seriously.
Yeah. Well, and I think that is really the point is I know that some of the operators that I've talked with, they are at a very kind of a conundrum in the essence of what isn't, inappropriate or sexual, and down to the point of where if you comment on the way someone looks, if you're a manager, hey, that's a nice dress, or I love your hair today. Is that an inappropriate statement? All the way down to almost putting these owner operators at a position where they're pulling that essence of what hospitality is meant to be out of the core of what it is meant to be. How much of a risk do you think we have there for something like that going too far?
Yeah, this is such a great conversation because I do hear that too. Like I can't even compliment a person, without it being this big ordeal. I mean, we have to. It's really hard. This isn't black and white. It's really hard to say what you can and can't do. This is exactly what you can do and this is what you can't do, other than being appropriate. And the problem is the person that's receiving the compliment decides if it's appropriate or not,
Exactly.
So what you have to just be very professional, and I would say, be on the safe side. You can be very professional and be complimentary without making it about somebody's physical appearance, without making a comment about what they're wearing. And I'm not some over the top HR person that's going to say absolutely don't be great to people and don't have an environment that's sort of a family friendly. I mean, it's about being natural and being real, but being professional and removing things that can be misconstrued as inappropriate. And so compliments about somebody's appearance, about, asking questions about their personal life, talking or making comments about political beliefs or racial comments, even if, you're just trying to be funny. I mean, we see a lot of complaints that come through there's a lot of these like memes out there that people like to share that are inappropriate, and removing those things because it's just not worth it. There's ways to create a culture of people that are going to be happy without doing those things. You don't need to bring that level of humor that can be turned into inappropriateness. You just don't need to do those things.
So I totally agree. I think we have seen, kind of the gauntlet has dropped, and at least I know many of the guys and people I'm talking to is that they have, they've just basically stopped, anything that's even remotely risky, which in a way I think it's sad because, as a hospitality, you want to kind of create a coalesced team. So now you're going to have to do it based on pure merit. And in most cases, I think that's probably the right way to do it anyway. Kind of curious. This is something that came up in a conversation I had recently with an operator, is that he's actually looking at changing his entire uniform style. So they're a casual, kind of an upscale, casual, edgy restaurant chain, and their waiters and wait staff, they are dressed, both male female, a bit provocatively,
Okay.
and so they are actually removing that as a part of their brand and moving to a much more conservative uniform.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that, and I'm in my view, now you're talking about shifting an entire brand experience for everyone,
Right.
the consumers, the people who work there, all that, based on the issue of something like a sexual harassment. I mean, do you feel like brands need to go that
Oh,
far?
geez. I mean, I think there are, I work with plenty of restaurants that have cocktail waitresses and stuff that are in more revealing clothes. And I will tell you the cultures and the groups that we work with that don't tolerate inappropriateness and that have a good culture, they don't have the issues with their uniforms. So I don't think you can just make a determination that everybody should be clothed from head to toe. And I think that would be a little extreme. But if you have, and I'm not, this guy might say, listen, it's just better for us. And, we're shifting our brand. And we had a lot of problems with how the employees are dressed with customers harassing them. I mean,
Right.
I think it's a decision that a group is going to have to make, and hopefully it won't play too much of an impact in their customer experience and that sort of thing. But I mean, like I said, I don't think that I would give advice across the board very generically that says, change uniforms if they're a bit revealing. I think that wouldn't be my advice.
How do you, when you look at a brand that does have that kind of scenario, and gosh, I look at the brands like Twin Peaks and Hooters and some that are already very provocative.
Yes.
And I feel like, gosh, aren't those just in essence sexually harassed, employees?
Yeah, right.
Based on what we're seeing in society today. But let me ask you this: what if a customer harasses one of your waiters or wait staff, and for whatever reason, they're wearing something a certain way, or it's just a pretty female or a handsome guy, but those people get harassed? What is the I guess the legal ramifications to the operator?
You have the same obligation to protect your employee as you did if somebody internally were doing it, were harassing them.
So if it's known, you've got to act on it immediately.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you that this is a very big one, Paul, that ignoring these complaints because it's like, whoa, that's the customer. What am I,
Right.
And, same level of urgency and care in handling those complaints. It's absolutely essential to do that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So being able to act quick and keeping an open line of communication to your employees to, hey, if this does happen. So scenario happened, a wait staff that was a bit disgruntled, claimed a customer inappropriately said something when the customer did not. How do you deal with those kinds of issues? Now we're really getting into some fun stuff.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, I think this is like, it goes kind of full circle. You got to start by, when you're bringing these people on, like what you absolutely will not tolerate. It's about caring about your people. You've got a server that's coming into work for you every single day, and you want to make sure that they feel safe and cared about and protected, and they can only decide that. So if a customer comes in and compliments somebody's look, and that makes them uncomfortable, that may not be that serious or drastic, but if they want it to stop, we've got to make sure as the owners and restaurateurs that it stops. If it's over the top and the severity of the harassment, or there's some sort of groping or things like that, then there's another level of seriousness that needs to be taken. So I think it's just really about the mindset of growing a company, and it's really about your people first, and you're going to build this great culture that you show them that they matter. And if people are going to treat them inappropriately or going to harass them, that as a company, you're not going to tolerate it, no matter if it's a customer or if it's the senior vice president of operations that's doing this.
Kind of curious. This, this came up actually just today as we record this podcast here. Matt Lauer was
Right.
asked to step down after 20 plus years in media,
Hmm.
and this one allegation hits. When you look at senior executives
Hmm.
for big brands, do you feel, and let's say that someone's got just a crystal clear career, and then one allegation hits that executive. I
Yeah.
mean, what's your
I will
approach to
tell
that?
you that it's usually not one allegation. You may just think it's one
Ah,
allegation. So
okay.
yeah, so most of the time it's one allegation that's so
That's come forward.
inappropriate and so off color or so risky to the company that there's no other choice to do that. But
Yeah.
very often people learn of somebody leaving a company when there has been some claim of something, but it's they've probably been warned or been through sensitivity training or had some sort of history for the most part to make that happen.
Hmm.
And I've seen too. I've worked with some great restaurant groups that have had very high level operators or executives be inappropriate one time, but it was at such a level of inappropriateness that they had no other choice but to terminate that
Right.
person. And
Right.
I
Yeah.
think it's a case by case basis. I mean, ultimately, where restaurateurs, in my opinion, go wrong, it's harassment and inappropriateness. Those things are going to happen. It's really the lack of handling it the right way,
Right.
investigating it, and taking the right action based on who they are or what they do for the company. That's really where you get into trouble, litigation and otherwise. Is
Yeah.
if you're not taking it seriously and showing the company and the world, if you will, that you are not going to tolerate. It doesn't matter who it is, if it's a senior person in your company or if it's a customer, whatever it is, you're going to make sure that it's appropriate in your
Yeah.
group. So
Well, I think that you hit on it perfectly. Is that you just have to treat this as a major impact to your business, and just like anything else,
yeah,
it's if you're getting sued by a customer or getting sued by an employee for whatever, maybe it's a worker comp claim. All those kind of things take serious level respect from management and the team around them, and things happen quickly.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
I think that you're dead on with the fact that it's just you have to respond so much and it's great in a way. I'm actually kind of thankful that some of these things are coming out, because I've seen our industry take some pretty big black eyes in
Yeah.
the last few years. And this, even though this is a black eye, I think this isn't just a black eye on the restaurant industry. This is a black eye around all business in its
Hmm.
entirety. I'm surprised we haven't seen more in the academic space coming out, which I'm sure is next up, medical,
Yeah.
you name it.
Right.
So, so it's not an issue. This is a societal issue that has to be addressed. So I'm so fortunate that the restaurant industry hopefully can get a chance to get their heads and arms around this, and help make a positive change. All right, so let's move past the ideas of what all has happened and if who did what
Hmm.
and those kind of things are going on. What are the best ways to kind of preemptively prepare for these
Yeah.
issues? What can you do as an owner or as an operator to get ready?
Yeah. That's a loaded question. And I think there's a lot of things that can happen, but I think it starts at the very, very beginning. First of all, you have to have a great culture. And that means you got to have the right leaders, you got to have the right managers that are in line with the values that hopefully you have defined to be, great people and ethical and all those things. And you have to have, great processes and systems throughout your company. And one of the areas, obviously, is what happens if something you do feel uncomfortable. What exactly is the process? And then, so from the very beginning, when somebody is hired, they need to hear who you are, what you stand for, specifically what to do if you're feeling harassed or intimidated or uncomfortable in any way by a customer, by a senior executive, by a member of the management team, by another employee. What exactly do you do? And what happens if what we tell you what to do and then nothing happens? You've got to put that
Right.
out there. And I think, it's sort of like a code of conduct, really kind of going through that and what our culture is and our stance on inappropriateness and harassment. And sometimes people
Sure.
get so caught up in what exactly is harassment and what exactly is just
Hmm.
inappropriate. Ultimately, it's just it's really about whether or not it's professional, it's inappropriate, and if it'll turn into something that is, legally defined as harassment. I don't get too caught up in that. It's really about, being
Yeah.
being a good company. And then, of course, at the very beginning, going through this, like a training session, if you will, or focusing on it in the orientation, and then having each employee read over your harassment policy that lists out exactly what you do when there is an issue. And so at the very beginning, they're set straight with exactly what you tolerate and what you don't. And
Right.
then it's really important to do either annual or maybe biannual training. And this is a very reactive area. When something happens, people then run for training. And instead of just
Hmm.
incorporating it, I think it could be incorporated. Managers go through an 8-week training program, make a part of it the harassment and discrimination training, and there's ways to make it really tie it into culture and being a great place to work. It doesn't have to be always dry harassment training that's like what everybody dreads. It can be about becoming a stronger leader and really how you treat people and what it means to be a great manager. How do you doing role playing, what do you do when an employee comes to you and says somebody made them uncomfortable, and really incorporating that into the training that you have at all levels of your company. And then it's just important to remind people and have periodic reminders. Operators and chefs, they all are doing these meetings, they do these shift huddles, they do things. It's okay to talk about it before things happen. Like, guys, listen,
Hmm.
I heard a person make this statement and it's not appropriate to talk like that or to share that meme or to,
Right.
show that picture to the employees. It's, we just want to make sure, and here's why, giving the whys and that sort of thing. Um, and like I said, so just like reinforcing the standards, the culture, incorporating this in the things that you do. So it's very, very proactive and it's very positive and it's very much about the culture and not about, okay, we've had problems. Let's train people on sexual harassment. And then I think, something else that, is important is that you really do have a plan for when somebody does report it. What exactly is the plan to investigate it, and how do you go about doing that, and who's really involved? And a lot of these restaurant groups don't have a full on HR department internally that can handle these things, and they certainly don't want to spend $500 an hour to have a lawyer come in and maybe manage this, but they have to have a process in place. And what do you do? And you have to take every single complaint seriously. And
Yeah.
that's, again, when there's trouble, is when you talk about it and you say you don't want to do it, and you have everybody sign the harassment training, and you go, you do all that, but then you don't handle the complaints. That's when you get
Right.
into huge trouble. So, and there's a lot of things you can do you can have outsiders, outside firms help with these things, or, designate somebody within your company that can handle these things. I also think it's a really good idea. This is a very, it's very simple thing to just putting something in the restaurants, even if it's just a printout that goes into the back of the house. It says, having any issues, have any complaints, here's the head of operations phone number. Here's your HR director's phone number and email. Here's
Hmm.
the CEO of the company's, contact, whatever. And maybe it's not their
Right.
cell phone number, but, so people are given lots of options to reach out to people if they are having problems. Because if they don't feel like they're able to go to anybody and their manager is the one that's harassing them or whatever, then at some point they're going to go to somebody that's outside of the company. And what you need to be able to show is that you learned of the information and that you ensured that it was stopping, and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. Kind of curious on the aspect of kind of even preempting situations like this, where I know with most organizations, background checks are in order, but this is not something that typically shows up on a background check. How
Right.
are there things you can do as a hiring
Yeah.
manager to kind of look at the people you're hiring so that you're not bringing in someone that might have
Right.
these behavioral problems?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Paul. I think that you can, people typically hire, we're in this world of like, in this industry, it's so hard to find great people and everybody's out there trying to find great managers. So they sort of rush through the hiring process. And
Yeah.
when you slow it down a little bit and you really dig deep in the interviewing process and ask questions that are really going to get you to know who the person is, and there's ways to
Hmm.
do that. Instead of just saying, tell me what your strengths are. I mean, there's really great
Right.
ways to dig into somebody's core beliefs and that sort of thing. And so doing that, and then also taking the time to contact their references, get a list. I mean, and there's a skillful way to go about learning about people without just having a simple checklist of how long did they work for you and would you rehire them. It's really
Hmm.
tell me who they are, and you'll learn a lot about somebody when you call a lot of the people that they've either worked for or that are in their lives, and you learn about their personality and their characteristics and who they are as a human being.
But is anybody going to give a bad reference? I
It's
mean, if
you know
if
what that and then I get challenged on this whole. I push people to check references, and it's really, if you don't learn something from somebody, if they don't call you back, that tells you something about the person.
Mm,
You know what I
right,
mean? And
gotcha.
so I mean, I think that, yeah, the world is afraid to give bad references, but if you go into a conversation, forget it being like a reference check, and it's really more about an in-depth conversation that you're considering to bring on this great manager, and you want to learn as much about that person and how you're going to make them a huge success if you do hire them. So I want to learn
Hmm.
about them. Tell me the good, the bad, and the ugly, essentially. People aren't always going to open up, but if you're very skilled in doing this, if you're really, and you've got to learn how to go about doing it, just like learning how to do a really in-depth interview. It takes a certain skill, but I think that if you just make the effort to call people and have a conversation, you might be surprised on what you can learn about somebody. And if nobody will talk to you about that person, I
Bad sign.
that's a sign, that is a sign.
Yeah.
So
Bad sign. All right. Well, this has been good. Obviously, there's some great resources on the EEOC website
right.
for scenarios around sexual harassment for operators who are out there listening in on this podcast. Definitely, we're going to probably be continuing our coverage on this as the industry itself is starting to kind of wrap their heads around this, mainly as a resource. Hopefully, bringing on people like Carrie here that can help answer questions for you operators who are maybe facing these scenarios. Maybe you've got someone in your organization right now who is a problem child, but yet they're a great employee, but just not being inappropriate, or they are being inappropriate. How do you deal with them?
Right.
Um, and maybe you've got people in your organization that just aren't, they're afraid to come forth on something, and being able to coach them into a position of safety so that they know that, the situation can be handled appropriately. I think those are the challenges that we're seeing. We've got a study happening right now on within Foodable Labs where we're looking at instances of mentions on social media because we index quite a bit of the restaurant industry through social based on people's titles or what they say they do in a restaurant. And hopefully here in a couple of weeks, we'll have some data on this to find out if there's a lot more claims than what we think. And is this a growing problem? Do we need to maybe take this to the national level with some heavy education and awareness? So, Carrie, I want to thank you so much for stopping in today. Great
Hmm.
tips and awesome information.
Very good. It was so nice to meet you, Paul.
Yeah, absolutely. For those of you who are, of course, new listeners here on the Barron Report, you can catch a lot of our past episodes. Some great topics we've covered, everything from chefs to restaurant operators and innovators to experts like Carrie. Make sure and subscribe on all the podcasts, whether you are an iTunes member, catch us there, over on Google Play, Stitcher, and so on, wherever you might get your podcast. Listen to, just subscribe and you'll get new episodes like this all the time. Also, we've got some new shows coming up. If you have not listened to Front of House, that's one of our other great podcasts, or some of our great shows on the network, both on iTunes and also on Amazon now. Amazon Prime Video has our latest documentary, Fast Casual Nation, Table 42, our episodic chef show, and Across the Bar, our show about the bar business. So make sure, if you're a Prime member on Amazon, check them out there. Hope you guys catch us on the next Barron Report right here.